This platform is for one race, human and independent thinkers. So if you identify as anything else or get your thoughts from your handler, this platform is not for you. For those who have your own open, independent mind, welcome to We Acted True. I'm your conversationalist, XL. This platform is presented to encourage you to be a better you using your own mind and common sense. I like to add that I'll be using basic terms and I may not always be verbally correct because most of my deliveries are not scripted. I also like to add that I identify as one human, but I will address us as we have been labeled to simplify some of the topics we'll be discussing on this platform. Topics such as past, present, future, oppressors, change, and strength, just to name a few. I'd like to start with a clarity test. I'd like to ask you to identify your life as this sheet of paper. And I'd like to ask you to navigate yourself through your life clearly. I'd like for you to identify what things in your life you can do without, what things in your life need immediate attention, what things in your life are just fine. But before you do that, I'd like to ask you to allow me to connect you and your life together as one. And I'll do that by connecting the two of you. Now I'm asking you to clearly navigate yourself through your life. Can you do it? Is it difficult? How about now? You see, as long as you are in the midst of your own life, it's difficult to see things clearly and navigate yourself in the right ways. So, i.e., you must learn how to remove you from you to see you clearly. Today's topic will be about oppressors. Mainly the oppressors of the past, because see, the oppressors of the past paved the way for the oppressors of the future. And the one thing that I like to address that the oppressors of the past did was they created 3 mega plans that are still being practiced today. And one being they gave the blacks a coping mechanism. 2, they gave the whites a false social status. And 3, they learned how to manipulate the 2 to make sure that people couldn't see beyond their tactics. You see, I'll start with the blacks and their coping mechanism. Let's say you are the child of a slave, which makes you a slave child. And master comes and get mother, brother, sister, or father out of slave quarters at night and take them to do, whatever they desire. Even if that's a sacrifice for a certain hate group. But at the end of the day, what you have to pass on, well, if you're the child, what's being passed on to you is keep your head held high because tomorrow's going to be better because they rarely ever come and pull someone from the same family 2 times in a row. There's no pleasure in that. You are mentally broke. You are mentally destroyed. So what they did was, like prisoners today, what they did was they gave the blacks a coping mechanism because blacks wanted to run and they saw death a fate better than the life they were forced to live. So they gave them a coping mechanism, which was the Bible. So the Bible gave them a freedom of mind, but not a freedom of body. And with that being said, that's what they started passing down to their youth. The parents start passing that down to their youth, saying that you have to have faith. You have to have faith. You see, we are in a bad place now, but faith tells you that it's going to get better later because the meek, which are us, we will eventually inherit the earth. That's in the good book. But now let me ask you this. Excuse me. I must ask you this. What position, well, I'm gonna ask you this. When the Bible was presented to your ancestors, was it presented to them willfully or forcefully? What position were they in when they received the Bible? Were they liberated from slavery, not by paper standards, but by life standards? Were they liberated from slavery and then received the Bible? A wild question. Do you think that, excuse me, do you think that the masters taught them about the Bible because the masters and the other oppressors eventually started seeing their livestock as human? Is that why you think they taught them about the Bible? They taught them about the Bible because they showed them their worth from the Bible. They taught them the Bible to help them uphold their role as a slave better. It kept them from thinking that they were being done wrong, because if the Bible shows you that you have a role as a slave and what your role as a slave is meant to be, then you're not seeing what is being done to you as anything wrong. If you don't believe me, read Ephesians 6 and 5. You see, the position that your parents or your ancestors were in when the Bible was taught to them, it was passed down from generation to generation to generation, and then to you. You see, but the one thing that was manipulated and lost among the way is when that lesson of the Bible was taught to them, the position also came with it. But along the way, when blacks were taught to teach about religion and the Bible, they were encouraged to practice what they preach and preach what they practice, and to teach the slaves certain sections about the Bible. And it always started out with Ephesians 6 and 5. So you must understand this. Society did not change merely because of slaves' prayers. Society of slavery changed because when the Union and the Confederacy ended the war and they decided to come together as one, it was understood that we would not be a nation divided. So, of course, the South still wanted to maintain slavery, and the North had already started in Pennsylvania. The first slaves, it was debate between New Jersey and Pennsylvania, but it was documented that the Pennsylvania freed the slaves long before Emancipation Proclamation, but that's something else. But the concept was society didn't change because of slaves' prayers. Society changed because when the Union and the Confederacy joined forces, it was proven that free blacks, free slaves, free blacks were able to make the country more money than slaves that were still in captivity. Slaves. And so that made that was the determining factor of, do we keep slaves or do we free slaves? So you can believe, if it was proven that slaves in captivity made more money, slavery will still be battled to this day. It will still be alive and well on paper to this day. So with ending this, and I'll go to the next section, my grandmother introduced us to the Bible. And my grandmother was a wonderful woman. Rest in me, because this is resting in love. So, but she taught us about the Bible. And me being me, she used to say, baby, you can't get into heaven straddle the fence. So be either all in or all out. So at the end of the day, you'll know for certain where you're going to end up. And I asked her one time why we needed to believe what we believed in. And my grandmother slapped me. I'm embarrassed to say it, but she slapped me, because merely questioning what she taught us about the Bible was blasphemous. That was tempting fate. But at the end of the day, that's not what I was doing. I was merely searching for clarity, to believe even better, to be more faithful to what I was being taught. Because the position of what came along with what was taught to us wasn't instilled in us. The position of slavery, it wasn't instilled in us. But Ephesians 6 and 5 will teach you your position. Man can't change what's in the Bible. The Bible says if you're going to believe in this book, don't change one word of it. You have to be as the book identify you to be. Now, as far as the whites come into this equation, I'm so sorry, excuse me. As far as the whites, they were given a false society. They was given a false social status. And what that was is the poor whites, they idolized the wealthy whites and their social status. And so, excuse me, I'm so sorry. They idolized the wealthy whites and their social status. And they wanted a part of it. They wanted to be what they were, but unfortunately, they didn't have the education or the money. So what the oppressors did was they taught the less fortunate, the poor whites, they gave them a false social status. They said, well, you know what? We're going to introduce you to education. You're going to learn how to write your name. You're going to learn how to count. And as soon as they mastered learning the ABCs and counting, they made a space in the education table. It's like going from the 3rd grade to the 6th grade, removing the 4th and the 5th. 3rd graders would look at that as so difficult, to not having the introduction to the 4th grade and the 5th grade, and being ejected from the 3rd grade to the 6th grade. That's kind of difficult. So what the less fortunate whites, the poor whites, did was they were taught. What they did was they accepted their role that they were given to be a part of a elite social status, and that is you're now better than the slaves. You're now better than this makes you better than the slaves. And so now what you need to do with your social status is you need to start living and making yourself show your social status by having things. Things is the big important thing that identify your level of social status of success. So the things that they wanted became things that they needed. And so when you put that gap in the education table, then to pursue a higher education became that much more difficult, and it made them the perfect underlings. It made them well enough to go to work for master, to be able to keep an accurate count on his slaves, and be able to identify a sheet of paper with certain marks and names on it to identify certain slaves. So that made them well, but at the end of the day, they carried along the concept that we are now better than the slaves. But the downside to that is slaves knew that they were owned. Poor whites did not realize that they were being oppressed. They were being owned. And it's still being practiced to this day. Whites were taught, where they were manipulated to hate everything that could have put them on a path to their own individual success. They were taught that if you save enough money to buy your own slave, guess what will happen? Your slaves slaves, we can't stop them from mating. We can't stop them from breeding. And what will happen is you barely have enough money for your family, but then taking care of slaves is a big responsibility. And they breed so fast to where they would easily outnumber you and your family, and they will overthrow y'all. They will kill y'all. And at the end of the day, the government will take more money from you and make it impossible for you, poor white man, to have, or poor white people to have slaves. And that stuck in their mind. And to this day, they are still hell-bent on social status. Before those that are poorly educated, before they will tell their children to take advantage of the education that can get them ahead, they would much rather tell them to don't think you're more than me, because guess what? You're already better than the blacks. Those are facts. You know it and I know it. So at the end of the day, I'm going to say this. The white people carry the concept of, well, not all individuals. Like I say, I identify as one individual. So whatever your race is, if you identify as one individual, we are in the same category. We are in the same category. We see eye to eye. So I'm going to say this. The hateful white people, the hateful black people, the hateful whatever race that know how to hate, you live in a world of, I hate my life because I was born blind, and I hated it up until I found out that someone was born blind and deaf. So you never learn how to exploit the other capabilities you have, because your life is then built around other people's misery. You can never learn how to go forward with what you're able to do, because you're constantly looking around for the thing that makes your life, and that's other people's misery. So I will close by saying this. Always remember to add your own mind and common sense to the topic, so it won't be what I say, it'll be what we say. And always remember to remove you from you to see you clearly. I'm your conversationist. I'm your host, Excel. Until the next time, let's keep acting the truth.